Hey Dragon Slayers! Today's video is about inflammation and its connection to insulin resistance. Our pop culture understanding of inflammation and oxidative stress has given these two processes bad reputations. Inflammation and oxidative stress are actually two critical components of our immune system. They are there to help the body not only defend against infections, but also to recover and heal when it's been damaged. In both instances, the body's primary immune cells can use inflammatory and oxidative stress events as needed to defend against invaders, such as bacteria, and help tissues repair itself. However, necessary and even occasionally beneficial these processes are, in certain circumstances, they can cross the line from good to bad, causing a cascade of events leading to the development of insulin resistance. Let's take a look. Inflammation researchers first identified inflammation as the cause of insulin resistance while studying the problems that accompany infections. People with prolonged infections, which naturally come along with an increase in immunity inflammation processes, develop insulin resistance. This is obvious. This is obviously relevant in a person who is experiencing an infection related illness, such as an infectious mononucleosis. Periodontitis, which is an inflammation of the gums of the mouth, can also cause insulin resistance. However, inflammation and insulin resistance is also relevant in autoimmune diseases, where the body's own immune system is attacking itself. For example, the inflammatory joint disease rheumatoid arthritis, where a person's body is destroying their own joints, is heavily associated with insulin resistance, to the point that those individuals who experience the worst inflammation also experience the greatest insulin resistance. The same effect is seen with other inflammatory autoimmune diseases, such as lupus and Crohn's disease. Even the most toxic and lethal forms of inflammation, such as sepsis, lead to insulin resistance. Revisiting obesity again, far less serious than sepsis, though far more common. Obesity is also an inflammatory disorder. As a person's fat cells grow too large, the level of immune proteins to the blood increases to the point that in many instances, obesity is referred to as a state of chronic inflammation. While inflammation is less obvious with obesity than overt inflammatory diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, its effects are nonetheless felt, even with insulin resistance. In the early 1900s, reports were published that detailed how fat tissue itself contributes to inflammation and ultimately causes insulin resistance. Fat tissue is capable of producing proteins and hormones, including inflammatory proteins called cytokines. As you recall, we started to look at these in an early video. As cytokines are flowing from the fat tissue, something happens more readily when fat cells are too big. They turn on inflammatory processes in cells throughout the body, especially the liver and the muscles. Once inflammatory pathways are activated, innocent fats become the dangerous fats called ceramides and actively work against insulin signaling in the cells. Tissues where ceramide accumulation become insulin resistant. As noted, visceral fat is more harmful than subcutaneous fat. Understandably, too much fat surrounding our internal organs could be problematic. The fat could start to impede our organ function. This is why visceral fat, the fat from these fat cells, and reduce the size of fat. So, visceral fat tissue becomes populated with macrophages, the prototypical white blood cells whose main job is to clean up cellular mess. Unfortunately, as an individual continues to accrue visceral fat due to diet and genetics, the macrophages begin to lose the battle and itself get filled with fat, becoming a foam cell. The foam cells send out inflammatory proteins to bring other macrophages to the area to help. They too will become foam cells over time, and the problem will continue to get worse. So let's look at asthma. In a later video, we'll discuss the role of environmental toxins in causing insulin resistance. Inflammation is an important part of what causes insulin resistance. When people inhale toxins such as cigarette smoke, primary and secondary smoke exposure both increase inflammation throughout the body. However, with anyone exposed to these inhaled toxins, even healthy people will have some degree of inflammation. Certain people are more sensitive to them than others. These individuals may develop respiratory sensitivities such as asthma and similar complications as a result. Interestingly, these more sensitive individuals are also more likely to be insulin resistant. In both children and adults, asthma is highly linked to insulin resistance, which very likely develops as a result of the chronic, exaggerated inflammatory response accompanying repeat exposure to inhaled toxins. In the course of just trying to do its job, inflammation inadvertently drives insulin resistance. Of course, it's pushed into it by factors outside of its control. Most especially our diet and in some instances pre-existing problems, such as autoimmune disorders. While inflammation is driving insulin resistance, it does so with the help of intermediates, like ceramides. Inflammation is likely the leader of a gang, and the molecules like ceramides are the grunts, and oxidative stress is the head of another, albeit smaller, gang. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it really helps the channel out. And remember, guys, that together, you and I will slay the dreaded diabetes dragon.